Rollins.
Yeah, it feels really cool today, doesn't it? I mean, it's really like fall.
Yes,
baseball
it's getting
season.
there. It is baseball. You like baseball?
I love baseball, and I'm a darn good baseball player.
You are.
You'd never know it because
Well,
you're never out there.
Let me ask you a couple of quick questions.
Sure. No,
do you
don't ask me
that,
facts.
do you believe that corking the bat to offset scuffing the ball?
Yes.
Good. Do you think that the DH has increased run production in the AL?
It could be. But what about the RBIs? Go ahead.
No, we're leading up to is last night. We had almost...
Do you know how long it took him to memorize that?
No,
this is a man who knows nothing about baseball, but it sounds great.
That's not true. All of us guys know about baseball, don't we? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Boy. Last night,
Then why are you reading
Milwaukee versus the Cleveland Indians. Well, I have some facts here I want to tell you about. Can we roll the tape? I want you to see something. Paul Molitor lined a single to right field in the 6th inning, extending his hitting streak to 39 games. Now, that's the 5th longest streak in modern baseball history. Look at that.
It's not Molitor, it's Molitor.
That's what I said, Paul Molitor.
Oh.
It's your hearing that's off this morning.
I see, but it's your game, Raul, I know.
You got it. Now, do you know who's in 4th place?
That I don't know. Who is in 4th
Ty
place?
Cobb.
Oh, you're talking, I thought you meant, okay.
In history. He
Yes,
hit in
Ty
40
Cobb.
straight games in 1911. 3rd place was George Sisler. You remember George, don't you?
Sure.
You knew his sister, I think.
Sister Sisler?
Right. He hit 41 straight in 1922. 2nd place, of course, Pete Rose. Yep. He hit in 44 straight games in 1978.
And who's number 1? Come on, you know, Mark.
Joe DiMaggio.
Yeah.
56 in 1941.
Got it.
Well,
Boy, he knows his stuff. He's not even looking at the monitor or the Molitor.
Get over there.
Take us to the weather, will
I was
you?
going to say in 1941, Ted Williams hit 406 and did not win the MVP. DiMaggio did because of his 56-game hitting streak.
Wow.
Last time someone hit over 400. That's right on the inside of my contacts. I memorize it. All right, let's do the weather this morning here. 62 degrees right now in New York City and no humidity. It's a gorgeous fall morning, dare I say it, in August. It feels like a fall morning outside. A little bit of rain in parts of Virginia and North Carolina this morning. The heat today is going to be down in this part of the country. It's already 80 degrees down in Miami, 79 degrees in Dallas. That will switch to 90s a little bit later on. We'll tell you how to avoid the heat in the next weathercast. Since Paul Molitor he didn't set a record hitting 39 straight last night, let's put the little baseball guy up here in Wisconsin, because that, of course, is where the Brewers play. Paul, keep going. It's 59 degrees and raining in Chicago right now. There's a 1.5 mile visibility in the rain. As I've said before, they do not need rain. There's more coming later on today. Parts of southwest Iowa, I had to coach him for that. Had about 8 inches of rain yesterday alone in parts of southwest Iowa. As you can see underneath my foot, it's raining there right now as well. Put that back down. So come a little bit farther west, as I mentioned, 79 degrees in Dallas. A little bit of rain down here in Prescott, Arizona. It's raining right now, 70 degrees. 60 in Los Angeles. This part of the country on the Pacific coast looks just gorgeous this morning. 61 degrees up in Seattle. And as I mentioned before, 60 down in LA, just going to be beautiful today. That is a quick look at the national picture. Here's a forecast for your part of the world.
Higher pressure is ridging over the Southland today, which will lead us to a slight warming over the weekend in coastal areas. Otherwise, no change in the weather. High today near 80 downtown, upper 80s in the valleys, near 70 at the beaches.
That's the weather up to the moment.
Thank you, Mark. And now, Robert Osborne of the Hollywood Reporter.
Good morning.
Who's news?
Who's news? Eddie Murphy's very much in the news. Very much in the news. Big press conference yesterday. And how's this for a movie project? A film version of this year's Pulitzer Prize-winning play, Fences, co-starring its original star, James Earl Jones, and as his son, Eddie Murphy. It's going to happen. It's going to be Eddie's first drama. It's going to be done at Paramount. And with it, Eddie hopes to succeed as a dramatic actor where other comedians like Bill Murray in The Razor's Edge, for example, have failed. And that was only one project Eddie Murphy talked about yesterday at a press conference held on the Paramount soundstage in Hollywood. Eddie, looking every bit the corporate man, announced plans, including a new 5-picture deal with Paramount.
I want to do ultimately is I want to produce my films. I'd like to write my films. I'd like to be in my films and direct my films. I'd like to be more like Woody Allen and as a filmmaker, and that's what my company is going to be doing. That's the type of involvement I'm going to have in my pictures, rather than just finding a script and doing it. It's not fun to be a black actor and actress or any minority actor and actress or director or someone, because I mean, we're all creative people, you know. It's much harder, but things are changing gradually. That's one of the things I hope I'll be able to change through my company. I'm working on a movie with a comedian named Arsenio Hall we're writing, and with 2 writers named Barry Blaustein and David Sheffield. that we're going to do in January. And the working title for it is Quest, but I think we're going to change that. There are about 10 young black stand-up comics that I either started out with or I came out here and I met them, and it's like this sort of like a black pack, like your Brat Pack, and we have like a black pack of comedians, and we hang out together and we bounce jokes off each other and we write stuff and we help each other out. And Arsenio is an old friend of mine, and I'd like to work with him.
The reason Paramount is so delighted, of course, to continue its liaison with Eddie Murphy is because of money. 5 of the 6 films he's made for them have combined gross of $632 million. His latest, Beverly Hills Cop 2, is the biggest grossing film of 1987 so far, having taken in $149 million domestically to date. That ain't bad. And you like that. Interestingly, nobody mentions that 6th Paramount film he did called Best Defense with Dudley Moore, which did zilch business, but you do have to admit his track record is wildly impressive. Eddie's also going to move his offices into the historic Cecil B. DeMille building at Paramount. That in itself is a sign of Hollywood clout. It's also said that he's going to leave September 16th to begin a 60-day tour, and this is going to be his last as a strictly stand-up comic. After that, he says he wants to really expand his concert into more full-fledged shows to include singing and music. He also announced that there's going to be another Eddie Murphy movie in theaters this year. It's a concert film called Eddie Murphy Raw. It's going to open nationwide December 18th, directed by Robert Townsend. Robert, who, of course, was our guest when we were at Disneyland. Anyway, that's who's news.
Oh, he's a talented man, Robert Townsend and Eddie Murphy. Great.
Coming up next, we'll be talking with the author of a new book that claims to expose the dark side of Scientology and its founder, L. Ron Hubbard.
Plus, comedian Mark Jaffe and Money Watch with Betsy Ashton. So, stay for the day.
This portion of the morning program is sponsored by Mylanta 2, the double strength antacid.
The book is called L. Ron Hubbard, Messiah or Madman, and it's both controversial and shocking. It's about the founder of the Church of Scientology, and among other things, it charges that Hubbard used drugs and abused women and children. The book is co-authored by Brent Corridon and L. Ron Hubbard Jr., Ron Hubbard's son. Mr. Corridon is with us this morning. Good morning, Mr. Corridon. For those of us not familiar with Scientology, why don't you give a brief explanation of what it is, and then I'd like to go into your feelings about it.
It is apparently a psychotherapy. It has some of the cream of Oriental philosophy in it. The facts are it's an expression or a vehicle through which L. Ron Hubbard hoped to make enormous amounts of money and did in fact achieve that. It's an expression of his lust for power, greed, avarice. It's an extension of this man. The judge in California actually called it the alter ego of L. Ron Hubbard.
Did he actually say at one point that if you want to make a lot of money, you come up with a religion?
Yes, he did. He said that on 2 or 3 occasions, but one that I've been able to document.
Now, tell us a little bit about L. Ron Hubbard. We all hear those ads, Dianetics and
yes.
all of that. You're aware of those ads, yeah.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the man, or what you uncovered about the man.
That he was a heavy user of drugs in the 40s, is a bigamist. I'm the first one to have interviewed his second wife by bigamous marriage. She hasn't talked for 35 years. And the story that comes out is that he was a heavy drug user, which, given the front of anti-drugs and so on, was amazing to me. And out of his mental illness, which was quite severe, he asked for help in the late 40s from the Navy psychiatrists. Like one of the things he said at that time that expresses where this man was at and what happened was, he said, all men shall be my slaves. All mankind shall grovel at my feet and not know why. These were things he said under drugs to sort of get himself psyched up. And he wrote a book which is very seductive, very attractive in many ways, and quite workable in many ways. And this is what's presented out front through that book. And it's because of its attractiveness, it's extremely dangerous. Reader's Digest called it one of the most dangerous cults in America. It is, as far as I uncovered, the most dangerous because of its deceitfulness. The front is so attractive. The film stars up front, John Travolta, Priscilla Presley, these people have no idea what they're representing to the public and what was really behind the scenes and what was going on.
How do they get fooled? These aren't dumb people. These are bright people. They're creative.
Yes.
What are some of the tactics that he uses to fool people?
It's just, he's a marvelous writer, and there's a genius side to this man, and he presented such a benign front, and there's such great people he collected around him who are so sympathetic, and you get caught up in this whole wonderful thing. And the fact is, behind the scenes is this money-making contraption which has as its essence a thing that he wrote down called the fair game law, which means that anybody that crosses, and you don't discover this until you cross them, you criticize them in some way, and if you do, when you do that, you then discover that you are fair game, which means you may be injured by any means, by any Scientologist, may be lied to, tricked. This is official dogma of this man.
But are there documents of this? Have people been harmed?
Oh, absolutely. This came up in court. Enormous amounts of people have been harmed. They sent somebody up to beat me up over this book, for instance, beat up my friend instead. Sent somebody out to steal a copy of the thing. This is most recent, but it's a litany of families.
Tell us about his boat.
He was from 67 onwards, he gathered about him 300-400 people, took a ship and sailed out into the Mediterranean. And there he was looking for past life gold in a James Bondsian sort of adventure. He being the Goldfinger of James Bond, tried to take over the world, in fact. He wanted the country, Vesco style, he wanted to buy one. So he had to find his gold from past lives. And he actually had teams out there looking for this gold that he'd buried as a pirate in the 1500s, supposedly. And then he stashed money the entirety of his life up through last year when he died. He was at one point accumulating at least $1 million a week, according to one witness who signed the checks.
Where is all that money now?
I would assume that it's under the care of Pat Broker, who drives a red Ferrari and has taken, he's his ex-chauffeur of Hubbard, who has taken over the estate. I believe, mostly, or it may still be hidden. That's they will not disclose their money, so it may be stashed somewhere for Hubbard to come back to, quote unquote.
Now, one thing I don't understand, this was supposedly written with you and L. Ron Hubbard Jr., but I thought there are all kinds of affidavits that he wants his name taken off, and
yes.
There was a legal case about it. Explain that. What's your relationship with him now?
Well, it's non-existent. It was for the first year very good, and I got an awful lot of information from him. But the church caught him at a point where he was extremely ill, and he had harbored near death for a few days. He's a diabetic and had been quite sick. And he needed the money desperately. He was standing guard in a bank at night, and I believe he's still very sympathetic to the book, but he took the money.
Why do you think this is happening so much these days, the Moonies and the Scientologists? And what is it in us that seems to need to be led by a human God that could be leading us down one path or another? Have you thought about that?
A lot, because
I mean,
I was caught up for 22 years.
22. Now, what kind of a person were you that you needed that 22 years ago?
I think I was idealistic and young, and I just wanted answers. I think we all need answers. Society doesn't provide too many answers, and the spiritual, like the Jimmy Baker thing, you know, people are rushing for that. And Jimmy Baker, I mean, compared to Hubbard, looks like Mother Teresa. But
no, I think Tammy looks more like Mother Teresa.
But no, I mean, that's the sort of urge in us. We need answers, you know, and it can be exploited. And he exploited the goodness in people. I think I was a good person at that stage and still am. But
what stage is this in now? Are there suits against him? Are there suits against him? Because we've gotten all kinds of letters. It's a very angry church, the Scientologist church now.
Yes.
What is happening with you?
With me personally?
Yes, with the book. The book is coming out, but are there a lot of suits against
Oh, every attempt has. There's been 6 or 7 books prior to mine. They've all been squashed one way or another, bought off or harassed. You know, and in my case, they sent somebody in to get the manuscript early so they could sue me and bribe a couple of the printers. She went to jail, and you know, they've just been going flat out trying to get this thing. But this is out. I have a very gutsy publisher, and people that buy the Dynex book should buy this book also.
L. Ron Hubbard, Messiah or Madman? Thank you very much for
Thank you,
coming.
Maria.
Coming up next, we'll have Money Watch with Betsy Ashton, plus comedian Mark Jeffy. So stay with us.
Ross Crystal in Los Angeles. Thanks, Bill. In 1950, the science fiction writer L. Ron Hubbard wrote the bestseller Dianetics, the modern science of mental health. He called his philosophy a life called his philosophy of life, rather, a religion. And 3 years later, he founded the Church of Scientology. Critics accused Hubbard of masterminding a religious cult. Over the years, Scientology has experienced phenomenal growth and has amassed hundreds of millions of dollars. Among Hubbard's followers was Ben Corydon, once head of the largest Scientology mission in the country. Corydon defected from the church in 1982 and now has co-written a book with Hubbard's son. The book, L. Ron Hubbard, Messiah or Madman, is a bizarre tale of greed, corruption, and exploitation. Members of the Scientology Church are, of course, outraged with the book. Reverend Heber Jentzsch is president of the Church of Scientology. Gentlemen, welcome, and let me begin with you, Ben Corydon. You ran once the biggest mission in the Scientology. You left 1982. Were you in it for the money, or were you a true believer?
I was a true believer.
What happened there?
I discovered that someone else was in it for the money. The man that I truly believed in was in it for the money and the power. And when I discovered the details of that, I felt extremely let down, of course, and was shocked by the fact that the information wasn't available.
What did you discover and how?
I discovered through the courts largely that it was a money-making racket, and that L. Ron Hubbard had a very sordid past, in fact criminal history, and a long history of cruelty and so on to children and women, and I was outraged.
You say money-making racket, what do you mean by that?
I mean by that the money was going to Hubbard. He was collecting $1 million check a week, and we took him in for $50. We ran them up to $100. They went up to $400. They were taking $1,000 an hour for auditing, and the majority of that was going to L. Ron Hubbard.
But on that issue, he did have, and the church has a lot of followers.
Yes.
So the dollars coming in are not justified for what reason?
Well, partly because it went to L. Ron Hubbard. You had...
Go ahead. Reverend Whitman, in one minute. Go ahead. Finish up your statement.
The money went to L. Ron Hubbard. I mean, he makes Jimmy and Tammy Baker look like Mother Teresa as far as collection of money is concerned. Certainly, even the sexual history.
Okay, Reverend Jentzsch, you've heard the allegations, and your response is what?
Well, first of all, I mean, there are so many things that he has said which are, despicable, because he's trying to really destroy the First Amendment of the United States. I can see that he's been drilled for this thing, obviously. But I think it's also important that he makes charges of criminal charges. I have here his arrest record for assault with a deadly weapon where he tried to run over a Riverside County sheriff. Not only that, I mean, with this kind of thing going on with freeway attacks right now and people shooting at people, this man has a criminal record. I think CNN has to put that out there and let people know that he does have a criminal record. I have it right here.
You just put it out.
I understand that. The second thing is that you said that the book was written by L. Ron Hubbard, Jr. I have an affidavit from Mr. L. Ron Hubbard, Jr., which says that Mr. Corydon, in effect, has taken this without his permission and is using his name and essentially destroying his name. So it does not really have the sanction of L. Ron Hubbard, Jr. And then as to the issue of money, etc., I think it's important that this book was the thing that Mr. Corydon and Mr. Lyle Stewart tried to steal. It went to a federal court level. I have the court's decision right here. It cost them $15,000 because they tried to steal this cover. So here is a man with a criminal history who tries to make charges. Now, in terms of the money of L. Ron Hubbard, he didn't look at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decision the last week, which indicated that no money went to Mr. Hubbard. Also, that all the money Mr. Hubbard had was returned over to the church. He made his money as a best-selling author with 65 million books out there. Mr. Corydon sold 100 in the last 4 weeks in 2,000 stores, checking with the various stores.
Let's hear the response from Mr. Corydon.
Well, that's ridiculous. The facts are that Mr. Hubbard did do those things. As far as the criminal record, I should clarify that. I have a misdemeanor record from 1978 when I tried to escape with some materials which apparently were damning to the very people that he was apologizing for. Now, I'm talking real criminals. I'm not talking a misdemeanor here.
You should have gone to jail.
Can he
You should have gone to jail.
I gave you a chance, but just stop.
I understand.
I did not go to jail. I had a probation, and he has spent the last 15 years as a flunky talking. He's not the international president. He's no power whatsoever except for the title. And what he does is he practices this little lie drill. Now, there was some truth to my history, but this is a drill that they practice. This was seized by the FBI.
Mr. Corydon, you've got
and please let me
history.
speak. And
Well, he has the criminal
right here,
history.
Can we
He's
have
drilled to
him
do
turn
this.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Instead of debating each other's criminal histories,
Well, he has a
Well,
criminal history. I have none, and he knows that.
okay.
I have, right here, this is his lying drill. And what they do here is to
Oh,
train
Ben.
a student to outflow false data effectively. This is seized by the FBI and is one of their documents. Now, the facts are
Well, let's
that he
answer
has
that.
been defending
You make a
real
charge.
criminals for
Let's-
15 years.
Well, I never
In fact,
defended
he's
you.
the very fellow that lied to me and told me that these people were innocent. That's why I ran away with their documents.
This is your affidavit where you indicate that you ripped off the staff for Mercedes-Benz. It's signed by you. You
That is
also
not
had
what
them
it
build
says.
your house. It
Typical
says here.
lie. It
Well,
does
now,
not say
construction
that.
workers, wait a minute. It says 2,000
whoa.
instances of falsified loan
Here,
applications.
right here now.
Signed by you.
Excuse me,
what I said
gentlemen.
in there is not
Ross,
what I said in there.
it's signed by, I'll read it to you.
Well, the
exactly.
point is, you ripped off a Mercedes-Benz. Here we go with a lot of
Tammy Baker. This is
well, a lot of the trappings, Reverend, involved. I mean, these are the criticisms that you hear time and again.
That's why we threw him out, because a man was
You did not-
committing criminal
I wasn't
acts.
even thrown
That's
out. I
why
left.
you
I left.
were
Thank you
thrown
very much.
out.
You're
Mr. Corden,
an organization.
This
I want to
is his
hit.
own
I
affidavit
want to hit.
signed by him.
I want to hit another one of the Reverend's points about L. Ron Hubbard Jr. dropping out of this book.
Right.
What happened there?
Well, what happened is they paid him $250,000 at a point when he was broke with medical bills. Who paid him? The church did.
Where's
the Church
the
of
document?
Scientology.
Where is the document? Here is an
I don't
affidavit
carry
by
a big
L. Ron
batch of
Hubbard
documents,
Jr.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, well, you have no documentation, and that's just another criminal act, as
Oh,
far
come
as
on.
I'm
The man
concerned.
called me
You're
up and
trying
told
to
himself.
destroy.
The
You're
man
simply
called
trying
me
to
and
destroy
told
the
him
First Amendment.
that story myself.
You want to create
Destroying the
chaos
First
with it.
Amendment?
Yes, exactly.
It's
That's
interesting when you
exactly.
walk into a
You know?
bookstore, you will see their propaganda line all... Is it off?
L. Ron Hubbard
All over
sold,
the place.
he's selling
You'll see their
hundreds of
propaganda line,
thousands
and you
of
will
books.
not see one book against it. My book is selling over and over again. That's why he's
Over
here.
and over?
That's why they're
Our
so
lawyer-
terrified.
Well,
Well, let's get to the next point, and that is the cover. And in fact, your book jacket says on a dear book buyer, this is not the jacket we planned for this book. We have been forced to use this makeshift design in order to safeguard our right to ship Messiah or Madman to the public. Why? What happened?
Tried to steal this cover right here. That's why. So what happened? He
come
tried to
on.
steal this cover,
come
and that's what
on.
happened. Yes. And
Well, let him explain. Let him explain.
well, the court has. I have the court record right here. Right here. So
Can
I
answer
want to
this
see what he has to
question without
say.
him butting in all the
Okay,
time?
go ahead.
The facts are...
Criminal. We've got two book jackets being held up. I'd love just if we can get less commercial, we'll just find out what the issue is.
That's all I'm saying. This is the one he tried to steal.
Tried to steal mine.
Okay.
And you failed. It cost you $15,000.
The facts are that on this cover, that cover that he's showing up, which you have on your commercial, explodes every day on your commercials. They have this volcano, which they consider highly hypnotic. I parodied that. I had Hubbard's head
Well, you
coming
saying
out
that,
of the volcano.
you saying that you were
to make
you
a
were-
joke out of
you
it.
saying you were hypnotized for 22 years, Ben? Is that
Well,
what you're saying?
you
look at this
people
little
believe that.
picture?
L. Ron Hubbard believes that.
I don't believe that. I look at this picture
Well,
every
you
day,
don't
know?
you? Oh,
And you're looking at it now. Is Ross,
The
are you
facts are
hypnotized?
that they believe that volcano...
Gentlemen,
Ross,
stop.
are you hypnotized?
With all due respect, I'm
Are you
not
hypnotized?
hypnotized, but
It's
with all
ridiculous.
good due
You're right.
respect,
It's ridiculous.
are we not both sides here being very commercial? And Reverend, that's where a lot of the criticism comes in. Well,
This book sold 10
you must have
million
held that up now many
No,
times.
10 million
There you
copies.
go again.
He sold 100. You know, I mean, I rest on the fact that Mr. Hubbard has 65 million books out there, and he has 100. That's fine. The point is, he criticizes a man who has helped hundreds of thousands of people come off of drugs. We are training 35,000 people a week in
They are terrified
education.
of my book.
No, wait a
They're
minute.
absolutely terrified of my
What
book.
have
That's
you
what they're
done for
doing.
mankind?
Okay.
Mr. Corden, what have you done for mankind?
We're going to break for just a
Lot more
moment.
than you, Mr.
When we come back, we'll let you in on this discussion on Scientology. You give us a call. The number here in Los Angeles, again, 213-469-5533. We'll be right back. Joining us today, Ben Corridon, author of L. Ron Hubbard, Messiah or Madman, and Reverend Heber James, president of the Church of Scientology. We have calls, and our first one is from Los Angeles. Bob, hello.
How you doing? First of all, I wanted to say I wish I could hear both people speak separately because they're both talking at the same time. I am a former cult member, not in Scientology, but in another cult, so I understand what mind control is. And I would like them to discuss mind control, especially the guest who's written the book, and
Okay.
how Scientology, uses mind control to control its people.
Let's start with Mr.
I'll
Corrigan.
respond to that.
Can we, he asked the
He wants
question.
to talk to a church member who has that. That's just all.
Yeah,
I'm saying.
specifically to talk to me.
Go ahead. Let's start with Mr. Corrigan.
The mind control aspect, L. Ron Hubbard studied the various brainwashing techniques of the Koreans and the Americans, and he also studied particularly and told us one of his useful little messengers that he had as slave for him that he had used that he had used
I'm going to get to you, I promise.
Yeah.
that he had used the methods of the Hitler Youth Movement to organize the ship and Scientology.
All right, let me respond to this.
Go ahead.
First of all, you're talking about the fact that L. Ron Hubbard in 1951 exposed the fact that the Central Intelligence Agency was using mind control techniques called pain, drugs, and hypnosis. He exposed it long before 1976, which was at the time when the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence found out that this was going on. L. Ron Hubbard said this is the most dangerous assault on man going on inside the country and around the world. So he exposed at that particular time. Mr. Corrigan is trying to say something about the Nazis. It was Scientology that found out that Interpol, and I have page after page after page of document after document exposing the fact that Interpol was headed up by former SS officers like Paul Dickoff, SS number 337259, Bent. So I really resent you pushing with that kind of criminal type of action, you know. You are being very, very... Listen, Lyle Stewart is the man who put this piece of whatever together. I would like Lyle Stewart to come here, if he's got the guts, and he can come one-on-one with me. Gentlemen, the point is that here are document after document of the CIA itself exposing the fact that they have been involved in mind control experiments. We exposed it, and he regrets it. That's what he's trying to stop.
Next call. Let's go to Virginia. Hello, Mark.
Yes, thank you. Just a general comment. I had been interested in the Dianetics book, and when I heard yesterday that this discussion was going to be on the television, I was rather excited and thought it might shed some light on it, and it has. I just wanted to say to both gentlemen that after seeing them conduct themselves in such a professional manner that I've decided I won't buy either book and have given up on both of them.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you what, that book here sold 10 million copies. You have a right not to buy it, and you have a right not to buy the other book. But I'll tell you, that is a very effective book.
Our next caller is in Los Angeles. Hello, Randy.
Yes, good morning. I just have a question for Mr. Corrigan. I think I'm saying it right. He made a statement that the book was started with L. Ron Hubbard Jr., and then apparently Mr. Hubbard Jr. didn't continue with the book. Then he went on to make a statement that the people from Dianetics or from the Church of Scientology paid him off $250,000. My question is, if he's Ron L. Hubbard Jr., and if they sold so many copies, why is he destitute, and why did they have to pay him $250,000?
It's an interesting point. That the fact is, this man had no sense of family whatsoever. He hounded his own children. This particular man was hounded to the point where he had to change his name to DeWolf.
L. Ron Hubbard Jr.
And they had him in a very bad situation. They had him several times because his story was so dangerous, and this is the last time that it's going to be told, is in my book.
Took the name.
And that's how it is.
You sold 100 copies, and 10 of them were bought by our lawyers.
Oh, that is absolute bull.
You can try to do what you want to destroy the image of L. Ron Hubbard.
I know of 300
he's helped
myself
millions of people.
This thing is selling like
you bought most of them yourself.
Gentlemen,
I know of that many.
Let's get to the next
I'd
phone
like to
call.
get to as many calls as we can without the books being held up. Let's go to our next caller, John in California. Hello.
Hello, I have a question. It's related to the mailing list. There might be 10 million people that follow Scientology, but our family doesn't, and we don't have anything to do with it. And for 10 years, I've been getting this mail, this junk mail, I consider. I've tried with the post office to get them to stop it.
John, if you have a
I've
problem
even gone so far as to declare it obscene mail, but I can't get off the mailing list.
John, you just write to me. I'd be glad to see that your name comes off. Send it to me in Church of Scientology International. It's not a problem. I mean, we have millions of people who are on it, and if you don't want that information, it's perfectly all right. I mean, Scientology is the road to total freedom.
Our next caller is in Texas. Gene, hello.
Hello. As a former member of the SEA organization, Scientology, I'd like to say that I believe that Hubbard's technology is a very workable technology and helps people very much. But I'd also like to comment that I left the SEA organization because of the people who are in the church right now. One of the reasons I left was one day
in a class. I implied that Hubbard could have been wrong on a point. I was shouted at and severely reprimanded by CS for doing so, and I found that incidents like that were very common during my stay there. So just generally my comment is I think Hubbard has a very valuable technology, and I think it is in the hands of the wrong people at this time.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying. I must say, though, that with the current management, the expansion of Scientology has grown tremendously, Gene, and I'm still a member of the C organization, and I'm sorry if you feel that you had some sort of problem at that time, but as you realize and as you indicated, L. Ron Hubbard's technology is extremely workable. The man is someone who has helped people with tremendous amount to solve drug problems and so forth. So I agree with you. By the way, the other book that he's showing there, he tried to rip off this title. This just hit the bestseller list, 10 of the New York Times bestseller lists.
Okay.
L. Ron Hubbard hit 10 of these in 1 year.
Okay.
Now, I don't know how many Bent's going to hit, but he tried to steal that same type of name. It's using the same thing.
We got 30 seconds left, Mr. Corden.
This man that called
I get
was very
15.
lucky that he was not spat in the face, which is a common practice amongst the top priests of this organization.
Well,
the facts are that the technology is the cheese in the trap. There is some good there, and it's used to suck people in.
The fact is that Church of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard has made a technology which is workable. It is the road to total freedom. He may try to destroy it. Mr. Stewart may try to destroy it. They will not do anything. We are creating a good society, and we are creating a lot of help for people.
All right, gentlemen, thank you both.
Thank you.
When we return, a news update from Atlanta. That after this.
Welcome back. Church or cult? Religion or a lucrative business empire? Controversy is no stranger to the Church of Scientology. Defectors from the organization label it sinister and claim recruits are brainwashed, defrauded, and even physically abused. Loyal followers, however, say Scientology is simply a new religion which helps people lead more rewarding lives. Bent Corden was a major figure in the Church of Scientology for more than 20 years. In his new book, L. Ron Hubbard, Messiah or Madman, he tells of the often secret and dangerous world of Scientology. Well, here's the book, Mr. Corridon. Is he a Messiah or a madman?
He's a little bit of both, but I would weigh it on the madman side. But let's not take the entire book away from people. Let them read it.
Let them read it and find out for themselves.
That's right. It is up to the reader.
The book itself has become controversial. The publication, what's the story there?
The attempts to suppress it. This is the first book that's come out. There's been 5 or 6 other books written, and each one has been either paid, the author's been paid off, or in the case of Paulette Cooper, has been hounded to the point where she almost went to jail, and her name was put on subway walls as a prostitute, and all kinds. A horrifying story. The attempts to suppress this story have been just legion. In fact, we've been sued up around 10 times, and they have in fact suppressed the cover.
How'd they do that?
Well,
why?
Yeah, they have. If you could show the L. Ron Hubbard book there.
Yeah, this is the book that the original founder of the Church of Scientology wrote
in 1950. That started it all, and that's now again being promoted, multi-million campaign on television and so on. And my book, you'll see, has a plain cover. I don't know if.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. Now, what you have are 2 different books here. Right. And why was this cover made plain like this?
Because I did a parody of this one. I had a little volcano, a stylized volcano, and I had Hubbard's head coming out of the volcano. The reason being that the Scientologists believe that book, the symbol of the volcano, will command obedience because of something in the subconscious. And they believe that when you see that on television, you will become obedient by their book and join their group. And so when I parodied this, they became extremely upset.
Well, now, did they actually, aside from a lawsuit, which is harassment, of course, did they do anything else, any threats or anything like that about the book?
When you say they, I'm not sure. I cannot legally prove in the case. But after I wrote this book, a fellow came out speaking in Scientologies, looking for me, a big guy, 6 foot 4 or 5, leather jacket, leather gloves, and he was looking for me. And when he couldn't find me, finally, he grabbed my buddy and smacked him around real good and reminded him that this was for Corridon. And so that was the first thing. They also sent someone,
someone
came in, yeah, right, to a private investigator, supposedly. A girl was arrested for bribing a couple of the printers to try and get an early copy of the book.
What is their worry about a book like yours being published? I mean, Mr. Hubbard himself is gone, right? He's dead, at least that's what most people believe. So why would these people care?
Oh, the whole thing is wrapped around L. Ron Hubbard. This is L. Ron Hubbard's extension. This is L. Ron Hubbard's alter ego. This is still, according to them, Hubbard's simply up in the sky, and he's awaiting to come back, and he will take over the territory won by these people. They inside, secretly, they want to take the planet. These symbols they use and so on. You know, the planet is ours. The planet is ours is their thing. And so, yeah, they're doing it for him.
So they really somehow believe that, like Christians believe that Jesus is coming back to Earth, they believe L. Ron Hubbard is dead now, but he's coming back?
Well, he's their admiral. He was made their admiral. He was promoted when he died, and he's up there in the sky and experimenting for them to become spiritually free. And he will come back and take the territory. He will take it from wherever it is. The story of L. Ron Hubbard is the key thing, I think, here.
In the book?
In the book, covered in the book. I cover the brutalities of this man, his brutality towards his wives. His last wife he didn't brutally beat, but she went to prison for his crimes. A series of break-ins in Washington and so on. But the whole story is James Bondian, and the man who now runs the show is his chauffeur, Pat Broker, and he was nicknamed 007 for good reason. The ship, the whole story of Hubbard, he went off on a ship by the time his cult grew big enough to support it, and sailed around with 300-400 people on board a ship, and he had some young teenage girls around him, and they served his every need. They wiped his brow, caught his cigarette from his chain-smoking cools, and dressed him in the morning and rubbed his back and whatever. They were his messengers. So very James Bondian, and all the people on the ship were there to service him and handle his communications, so that his entire organization around the world followed his exact commands. And he sailed around looking for his past life gold. He wanted to recover the past life gold. So they searched for gold in various Mediterranean countries.
Past life gold, you're saying?
He had been a pirate, he said, in a past life. And he had buried gold then, so they were there to recover it.
Did they ever find it?
Well, one man claims they do, others claim they don't. You take your guess. But
how many people did he actually get into his organization before he died?
They claim 6 million, and probably that approximates the amount of books sold. I would say a couple of 100,000, which was the hardcore in the 40 to 50,000 range.
But he also accumulated a lot of money, did he not?
And he was at one point collecting $1 million a week, and this is from little guys, a lot of little guys. We could get $100,000 off a young guy. I was part of that arm when I really believed in it, from his parents, from wherever, and it all accumulated, the majority of it in Hubbard's accounts, personal accounts.
You yourself were a part of this, so we're going to talk about that when we come back to Bent Corydon and the discussion of L. Ron Hubbard and his new book on L. Ron Hubbard in a moment later on Night Watch.
From CBS News in Washington, this is the CBS News Night Watch. And sitting in for Charlie Rose, here is CBS News correspondent Robert Pierpoint.
Welcome back. We're talking now with Bent Corydon, the author of a book about L. Ron Hubbard and the Church of Scientology. And you made a statement which kind of intrigues me. You said that he had a lot of young people around him, pretty young girls who took care of him and that kind of thing. How did he manage to get a hold on these? I mean, he was an old man. How did he get these acolytes?
Well, of course, they believed everything he said, that he was the great benefactor of mankind. And then there was the fear side. By the way, he explained to one of the young girls that he chose her as a youth, and of course the leaders now came out of that cadre because she was an empty palette, and he could draw on her without anything else being there. And he said he got that from the Hitler Youth movement. And
he probably did.
And oh yes, he read all that dark stuff. The black arts was very much he was into. And of course, he also had techniques where he would lock them in the closet, and prior to that, lock 4-year-old children down in chain lockers, rusty chain locker, very dangerous, and they would be in there for some 48 hours scraping at rust and so on. Brutal to children, as he had been to his wives, the first two. And
what did he do to his wives?
The first one was beaten repeatedly, just a brutal, and abortions and forced abortions and so on, which is, he talks a lot about abortions in his first book out of that experience.
You know, this guy sounds like a kind of an evil character. How did you get involved with him?
Oh, nobody told me about that, interestingly enough. They have a marvelous marketing front. And to this day, people are joining from reading this book and getting caught up in this seductive front, which has a lot of beneficial materials in it. So you get all caught up in that without knowing that behind it is this dark operation where they actually, and one of the key things is that they collect your secrets by means of an e-meter and confession. They call it auditing. And we can get, they have a needle on this meter, and it'll give you a little tick. For example, I might, if you were holding these cans now, and I was the counselor.
This is a meter that
That's
I'm
right.
in theory holding, yeah, okay.
You hold a couple of soup cans, and I sit here with this meter with a needle on it. And I'll ask you, what would you not want the viewers to know about you? And I'll say this with a good punch. And at that point, there'll be a little tick on this meter, and given that you have something, you wouldn't ever, and there it ticks. And I'll say that. And you'll look a little bit, and it'll tick again, and I'll say that. And until, then you'll tell me the whole thing. The thing is that can be very good. Confessions have got a long tradition, it's fine.
It's kind of like a lie detector, this meter?
It actually does work very well. It'll give you that little read until the guy fesses up.
And then you use that information in some way against the person?
This is what's not known, even by me, as I sit here. But I'm writing notes, which is for your benefit because we're going to supervise your case, see? But meanwhile, they have an intelligence operation where they'll go through these things and they'll cull out anything they can use. And mine was on microfiche in England. They are that organized. And then if you cross us, buddy, you know, we got some things on you.
I see. Well, now, you were in this organization for quite some time. At what point did you begin to realize it might not be a religion?
It snuck up on me after they manhandled me pretty badly. I happened to be in the area that Hubbard moved into in 1977. And so
that was in Southern California?
Right. He moved into Riverside County in the desert. And at that time, the heat started coming in on me. And by 1982, it sort of snuck up on me. I was very shaky. But by 1982, I was finding out some very devastating things from behind the scenes. And then they sent in Hubbard set up an international finance dictator. He's a science fiction writer. He invents titles, international finance dictator, and he sends these people in operating on their fair game law, which means I had secretly been declared an enemy, and therefore I was to be tricked. I was to be injured by any means. I was to be sued, tricked, lied to, destroyed. I mean, this is Hubbard's policy that they actually operate on. They'll claim it's canceled, but that's not true.
You intrigue me. You talk about him and his policies as if he's still around.
Yes, because they believe he's still around, and they operate. And in fact, a judge in Los Angeles declared that the organization was his alter ego. And these people follow and are so indoctrinated in his writings and commands that he still has command intention. They believe he is their admiral running him. So therefore, I tend to speak a little from their viewpoint. I do not believe it.
You do not believe it?
No.
Because there seems to be a theory that those who have been heavily programmed by this cult never get out of it.
Right. My publisher pointed out something similar, and if I were still there was still a mark on me, I probably wouldn't know, so I'll leave you to be the judge, but I don't think so.
Okay. What are you doing now besides writing this book about Scientology?
I took my group and we left. And they managed to scare a lot of them away from me as well. But we still have a group of people, And we try to educate, and the book, I guess, follows that pattern, people who are indoctrinated in this so that at the age of 19, some other kid, I have some karma to work out. I basically got a lot of people involved in this and took an awful lot of money from them for Hubbard. And
you have some guilt to work out.
You've got it.
And so the group you're talking about are people you kind of enticed into Scientology and now you're taking them out? Is that the idea?
At least so that they can... I believe that they should still have the right to pursue spiritual goals. And happiness and so on per the Constitution, which these people do not. They're very anti-Constitution, would love to put a dictatorship of Ron in this country and the world. But to pull these people out and to enable them to think for themselves. They don't have to be part of my group, but to be a support group for people who still want the same goals and who still believe in some of the good side of this thing, but do not want all the manipulation and obedience that is put in by Hubbard's command intention troops.
In fairness, perhaps we ought to ask you, what are the good sides of Scientology?
Yes. For instance, the counseling technique I just went through with you is a key thing. And if getting something off one's chest is not enforced, and you really trust the person, and you can, it's legitimate trust, then that's a good thing. And a lot of the counseling there is based on the works of general semantics founder Alfred Korzybski, who I consider a genius and who is studied in a lot of legitimate universities. Hubbard simply stole great chunks of this, put it in this book, which, by the way, his second wife, a lovely young thing called, at the time, who is still a wonderful person, very sharp. I'm the first one to have interviewed her in 35 years, and she won't be interviewed anymore, so I was very, very fortunate and very much impressed me. She's very much behind that book and a lot of the good techniques in Scientology.
Just one last question, because we don't have much time. Do you think that this Church of Scientology, so-called, will continue now that Hubbard is dead?
Their big media blitz, I believe, is working, and that's one of the reasons I think it's very important for people who buy that book to also buy my book. That's my plug, but I think it is working, and I think that's rather frightening.
Dangerous.
Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Ben Corydon, the author of a book on Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard, and we'll resume with Night Watch in just a moment.
Next on
discussing the Church of Scientology and its leader L. Ron Hubbard. Our guest is a former Scientologist. His name is Ben Corydon. He defected from the church in 1982, and he started writing an expose on the church and on Hubbard. The book, L. Ron Hubbard, Messiah or Madman, was written with the cooperation of Hubbard's son. Well, we welcome you, Mr. Corydon, to Newsnight Update. Tell us why it is that you left the Church of Scientology.
I left the Church of Scientology because I discovered the real thing that it really is behind the scenes. I was caught up in the front of it like anybody else. And
what is it behind the scenes?
Behind the scenes is L. Ron Hubbard, the real L. Ron Hubbard. And as the documents came out in court in his own writings and so on, I discovered who he really was. This is a man who has been mentally ill from the beginning in the 40s and who wrote such things in his own handwriting as all men shall be my slaves, all women shall succumb to my charms, all mankind shall grovel at my feet and not know why. And his motivation was power. It was lust for power, greed and avarice throughout the entire time until he died last year.
All right, and now, and tell us here briefly about the cooperation that you got from his son in writing this, and then that cooperation ended.
Yes,
give us a thumbnail on this saga.
Okay, I worked with him for a year, and I got extensive cooperation from him. At which point he was extremely sick, became extremely sick, and he was paid an awful lot of money to pull away from the book, and he took the money, and so that's the end of that. I'm sure he's extremely sympathetic to the book, however. Mm-hmm. He was throughout the time that we cooperated.
Yeah. Now, certainly this is not, I don't suspect, the first time that you've been on a program of this sort, a radio or television or cable program, to discuss your book and the Church of Scientology. And so I suppose it doesn't come as any surprise to you that a lot of present members of the Church of Scientology have been besieging our studio lines tonight already in anticipation of your appearance here.
Yes.
And one fella wrote a letter to us that we received more or less in cable fashion here, I guess. And he raises a number of issues, and I'm not sure what it has to do with it. One having to do with you having a scrape with the law, having to do with a traffic accident. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about this so that we can get some of this out of the way. And
Sure. No. Well, I'm declared an enemy, so they can, according to their fair game law, which is the central thing behind this, which makes it such a dangerous cult. They can lie about me, they can destroy me, they can injure me by any means, according to Hubbard's own fair game philosophy. I've been declared fair game. Now, this is just, it's a joke. It's a misdemeanor back in '79, and Sheriff Jensen, who was the man involved, knows exactly what happened. These people know exactly what happened, but they've got to discredit me in some way. In fact,
this then you maintain has nothing to do with you being a one-time member of the Church of Scientology. This is totally separate. It apparently they provide a police report here that you had been arrested for assault with a deadly weapon, but none of this has anything to do with the Church of Scientology.
Yes, it has everything to do with it. I was part of their cult at the time, and I was trying to protect their documents. They were covering up for Hubbard and have been for years. He shredded more documents to keep himself away from criminal charges himself. His wife and 10 others went to jail. These were the top officials of the church. So during that period, I was a loyal follower, so it was all part of that.
Okay, and
they greatly approved of me at the time. Now they're busy saying I'm a criminal, you know.
And he accuses you of, quote unquote, ripping off the Church of Scientology. What is he saying here?
I have no idea what they're talking about, but that's the sort of thing they will run. This is an extremely dangerous cult, and if you cross them, they go for you in every possible way.
Why are they dangerous? What are they doing that's dangerous?
Well, they're so deceitful. You have the fair game law.
What could they do to me?
Oh, they can play an awful lot of tricks on you, believe me. We've been harassed, like my book, for instance. They sent, apparently, somebody in to bribe the printer to get a copy of the book, and they've launched about 10 lawsuits. They try and do things as much as they can legally these days because they end up in jail. But
part of their objection to the book, aside from, I'm sure, objections to the content, is that you are making, if not almost a copy, a very similar look to the copy of the Dianetics book that I suppose a lot of people have seen.
That's the volcano and so on?
Yeah.
What I did was they have a strange piece of theology, if you will. It's a piece of science fiction of Hubbard's. 75 million years ago, this planet was devastated by H-bombs put up on these volcanoes, and the idea is with this book to hypnotize people into somehow being obedient to them and buying the book and joining their group. So when I put on my cover a volcano with Hubbard's head rising out of the volcano, they took great offense, of course. And with the judge, without ever having seen it, heard that there was a volcano on and agreed with them that the idea was to stop the book. And we didn't go for that, and we issued it with a plain cover instead.
Okay, we've got a lot of folks who would like to talk with you tonight. Our first caller is on the line right now. You're calling from where, and your question for our guest, please.
Yes, sir. I'm from San Francisco, and I'm intimately involved with the Church of Scientology.
But you might be.
As a matter of fact, I know for a fact that Mr. Corydon is not only a crook, he's a criminal. L. Ron Hubbard has sold over 65 million books.
How do you? Before we go into what the books that L. Ron Hubbard sold, why are you what exactly did Mr. Corydon do that makes him, in your view, a crook?
Well, he was once part of the church. He was actually fired from the organization.
That's not true, I'm afraid.
It is true, Mr. Hebert.
No, it's not true.
What did he do that, in your view, makes him a crook?
Well, what he's done that, in my view, makes him a crook is that this gentleman has been trying to make a lot of money by trying to make an quote-unquote expose of Mr. L. Ron Hubbard, who has done nothing but to help. Mr. L. Ron Hubbard is not a crook, is not a criminal.
But you still haven't answered the question of what makes Mr. Corydon a crook in your view. Writing a book does not make him a crook.
Well, Mr. L. Ron Hubbard, he claims that Mr. L. Ron Hubbard was a criminal and was a crazy man.
He was. His wife was indicted.
I'm not getting an answer.
He was
Let's
a
go. We'll
fugitive.
go to another caller. Go ahead. Next caller, you're calling from where? Your question, please.
I'm calling from Las Vegas, Nevada, and I have a business associate who's involved with Scientology pretty heavily, and he seems to say that after you get cleared for a certain level, you become a Satan god. Could you please comment on this, please?
Well, the idea is that's the carrot. The idea is to be a Superman, and that's all put out there, and that's what they try and do. One of the key things that makes this,
if you would, what exactly does the Church of Scientology?
Oh, that basically that you can leave your body and play all kinds of tricks that you can, things that people really dream about. It's part of making it so terribly seductive.
The Christian God is not involved. The Judeo-Christian God is not involved, is he?
Well, this is an interesting point, the Pope being around and so on. These people present themselves as a sort of a Christian church, when in fact L. Ron Hubbard voiced on many occasions that he wanted to destroy Christianity, and that priests, some of the people that he rails and rants against, and in fact he said very clearly that he is the successor to Aleister Crowley, who claimed that he was the Beast 666. So here they are wearing their Christian collars. This is part of the deceitful nature of this organization. They, in order to cover under the First Amendment, they present themselves that way.
Well, we've got a lot of callers. Here's our next one. Calling from where? The question, please.
Yes, hello. I'm calling from Southern California.
All right, go ahead.
And I know Mr. Corridon had his own mission for a period of time in Riverside, California.
That's true.
And this was after he left the Church of Scientology. I received a type of therapy there, which in Scientology they call auditing. And I have a couple of questions. First of all, I'm wondering why Mr. Corridon would have been practicing Scientology and giving auditing if he had left the church and felt that he could not follow L. Ron Hubbard or believe in his teachings anymore. And then also, I'd like to make the comment that Mr. Corridon and some people that were working with him at that time were making promises about course materials and things that they could provide when they actually couldn't. So Mr. Corridon had been misrepresenting himself and his organization.
This was when he was a Scientologist.
This was after Mr. Corridon left the church. I don't know the circumstances under which he left the church, and I won't comment on that. But he left the church, started his own organization in Riverside, California, and was providing the same type of therapy, which is called auditing, for people who had left the church.
All right, tell us what that is very briefly. And
well, very simply, we left, and then it was subsequent to that we discovered a lot of the stuff that came out. In fact, most of it in 1984 became extremely clear about L. Ron Hubbard, his own documents as to what he was doing and so on and so forth. So there was a period of time in there.
Briefly, this auditing that he's talking about in Scientology?
That's right. There's a lot of very good counseling in there that has a great deal of workability. That's what makes it so terribly seductive to people, because they do feel very, very good from it. And it is, in fact, quite effective. And now, that's the cheese in the trap. Behind that, you have the fair game law and L. Ron Hubbard's greeds and power pushes and so on. There was an attempt to take over the world by Hubbard. He wanted to take the world and sailed around on a yacht with 300 or 400 people servicing him, little teenage slaves that wiped his brow and washed his clothes 16 times and so on and so forth. This is stuff that's not known to the average person. And these people that call in have not read my book. They're forbidden to do so. It exposes an enormous amount of the deceits and so on, and the treachery. A book like this is necessary, particularly in this cult, because it is so deceitful and so such complex control mechanisms. Hubbard actually trained these youthful followers of his in Hitler Youth Movement techniques and told that to one of his little teenage slaves. They were 12 to 14 years old, beautiful little girls that followed him around everywhere. That's the scene.
Well, listen, I wish we had more time, and maybe we can do this again with you. Bent Corridon, a former Scientologist and author of the book L. Ron Hubbard. And we thank you for being our guest. We thank our callers. We'll be right back. This edition of Newsnight Update. You'll want to be with us tomorrow night. Susan Rook will be joining me. Our guest is going to be Barbara DeAngelis, and she's going to be here in our Atlanta studios. Her topic, women who make more money than their mates. Have a good night. I'm Patrick Emery. The news continues.
Church of Scientology, and it
also indicated that we are religion. This is the first time we've been able to push this into the federal courts. There was also an Eighth Circuit Court decision in terms of contributions to the Church of Scientology, which said, yes, the IRS recognizes Scientology, it recognizes that counseling is valuable to the people, and it said you cannot put a price on the spiritual counseling that a person receives in the church.
Yeah. Now,
these
what
are
about
major accomplishments for us.
Sure. What about the Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, though, removing the tax-exempt status, which kind of takes it out of the area of a traditional church?
Okay, now this is very important because they're talking about 3 years an issue in one particular church when we have 600 organizations. So right now the score would be somewhere around about 18,000 to 3 for the Internal Revenue Service. We're ahead of them 18,000 by their 3. Let me say one other point about that. They also did away with 2 other particular issues. One was public policy, and the other issue was commercialism. Those were disposed of. So these were major, major inroads that the church accomplished in that particular litigation. I'm very, very pleased with what we accomplished when you have to deal with the Internal Revenue Service or the Infernal Revenue Service, however you want to call it, over that period of time. We won a tremendous amount in that particular case. But remember, it's one church for 3 years on that particular issue, and that issue alone. We won on other major issues. So I was very pleased to see what we accomplished. We won in that issue, and we are the only church I know that has beaten the U.S. government for a number of times on these issues. We're winners. We are expanding because of it.
Now we have some viewers who would like to talk with you. First caller, you're on the line. You're calling from where in your question, please?
I'm calling from San Diego, and I have a comment, and the comment is that I have been to the Church of Scientology in New York City about 15 years ago. I was there for the initial interview where you hold these 2 cans and they read some meters, and after that I was taken on a tour of the entire facility, and I was introduced to a number of people who had been in the organization for a long time.
And do you have a specific question?
No, I'm making a comment. And
briefly, please.
Yes, the comment is that my experience of those people is that they are doing brainwashing, and I feel like it is a negative church, and I do not think that it's something that is positive.
Now, that's a very common
respond to that?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I may respond to that. Well, you know, I hear this brainwashing charge. Usually I think the people who make brainwashing charges are people who have dirty minds and are afraid that somebody's going to find out about it. That whole issue...
No, in all fairness, that has been the basis of several of the lawsuits, especially the young couple, when they said that there was the mother-daughter relationship that became estranged, and there have been some very serious charges about brainwashing. The brainwashing charge, because, and this is important, let me understand and tell the people that in 1951, L. Ron Hubbard published a book called Science of Survival. In that book, he outlined the fact that the United States government was involved in brainwashing activities. They were drugging people with pain and drugs and hypnosis. But what he also said was, we can recover that information. We can help that individual who has been destroyed by that type of activity by the American government. It was not until 1976 that the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence hearings brought forth that information, but he published it in 1951. If there is brainwashing going on in America, it is being done by government agencies. It is being done with the tool of psychiatry, which is destroying the minds of our young. We have a way of rectifying that. Saying, but you didn't respond to the question of, does the Church of Scientology brainwash its members?
No, I would say that the only cult I know that does that is the CIA, and I don't see them washing their brains and hanging them out to dry out there at Langley. I think that's a rather spurious type of charge.
Here's another caller. You're calling from where? Your question for our guest tonight, please.
Yes, I'm calling from Toronto, Canada.
All right.
And last night...
Hi, Toronto.
Yes. How are you?
Great area out there. I love it.
Well, good. Glad. I like it, too. Last night, the gentleman who was speaking was questioning Mr. Hubbard's moral character. Now, I have a reference here in a book called Ritual Magic in England, which is a scholarly study indicating that Jack Parsons was associated with L. Ron Hubbard, the famous California physicist, in the 1940s. That he apparently tricked Mr. Parsons into opening a joint bank account, of which Mr. Parsons contributed $17,000 and Mr. Hubbard $1,000, withdrew the money, alienated the affections of Mr. Parsons' wife, and fled to
Mr.
Florida.
Parsons was working with Aleister Crowley, the Beast 666, and Mr. Hubbard was concerned about breaking up that issue. And of course, as you understand, Mr. Hubbard was the individual who prevented these rocket scientists from getting further involved in the drug-related activities of Mr. Crowley, and he did break up that organization out there in Pasadena, California, and we handled that in a suit in England. We won 25,000 pounds for those illegal allegations and those libelous statements, and in fact, the newspaper involved gave us a statement of apology. So it's an old story, and I know that that's been tried to be run in on Scientology, but we are able to clarify those issues, and I must say, Dianetics and Scientology are growing because it is a workable study technology. It has a workable study technology. It handles the problems with drugs and so forth. And Scientology is the road to total freedom. People like it.
And our next caller is on the line. You're calling from where in your question for our guest?
I'm calling from Seattle, Washington. My question is...
Another favorite city.
Oh, great. Why is there such a negative impact or influence from your church throughout the country? I don't think you find such negative connotations in other conventional religions.
My friend, I have been treated with the greatest respect when I was at the White House 6 weeks ago. I've been treated with the greatest respect at the United Nations with the individuals that I meet there. I have been treated with a great respect with religious leaders around the world, including the Vatican and so forth. I think that what you are saying is an old particular issue that died a long time ago. Scientology is now meeting with religious leaders around the world, and I meet with these individuals. They want to know, why is it Scientology is so popular? Why is it that people are interested in helping themselves? What is this capability you have to handle drugs? Because the other churches are plagued with it. But L. Ron Hubbard's purification technology is doing something about that. We can increase IQ, and I know that that is possibly a heresy, but Scientology is the road to total freedom. It works. It's a wonderful thing.
We've got a number of other people who would like to get some calls in here, so if we can get some quick calls and quick responses. You're calling from where? Your question tonight?
I'm calling from California.
Okay. You have a question?
Yes, I do.
And it is?
Well, I'm a reader of Ron Hubbard's science fiction books, and I heard that L. Ron Hubbard passed away last year, and I was wondering what effect did that have on the church?
Well, I think what's interesting is that Mr. Hubbard left behind a capability for people to be able to administrate. He wrote up all of the various capabilities for administration for the church. As a result of that, the church has continued to grow, continued to expand, and in addition, he has turned over his wealth to the church. His entire life work was assisting the church, and so his departure a little over a year ago has not affected the church's expansion or growth. Indeed, what it's done is given us greater dedication, greater capability, and the current management structure is such that it has helped us tremendously to expand. I also have to say, you know, our education capability, you know that we have trained 1 million people in South Africa in L. Ron Hubbard study technology, more than any other type of organization I know of. In fact, one fellow said, I have found the light I have been searching for all my life. If this technology could be brought to our nation, we would not have the problems that we now do. Forward with L. Ron Hubbard, forward with Education Alive. That is a testimony to the potential growth for South Africa, and I think in terms of solving the problems between white and blacks and the apartheid issues, we have done tremendously well with that area.
We are out of time. We thank you for being our guest tonight, Reverend Heber Jentzsch, the president of the Church of Scientology, and we thank you, callers. We'll be right back after this.
Thank you very much.
Stand by.
That's it for this edition of Newsnight Update, but you'll want to be with us tomorrow night when our guest will be Dr. James Gordon, a psychiatrist who has done extensive research and investigation into cults. Good night. I'm Susan Rook.
I'm Patrick Emery. The news continues. His effect on his followers. We'll also talk about other figures who are considered cult or spiritual leaders of sorts.
Our guest tonight is Dr. James Gordon. He is an expert on cults. He's a psychiatrist who teaches at Georgetown University Medical School in Washington. He's also the author of the book, The Golden Guru, The Strange Journey of Bhagwan Shree Rajneesh. Welcome to Newsnight Update. Before talking about the Bhagwan specifically, let's talk about cults in general. Why do people give up so much, leave to follow someone who claims that they are a master of sorts?
Well, I think it varies. It depends on what the age is. It depends on what the situation of the people is. But basically, I think we have to understand that people are looking, people are searching, and at different times in their lives, that search becomes more intense. For some, it's when they're about to go to college. For some, it's when they're leaving college. For other people, like the people who joined Rajneesh, it was generally later on, in their 30s, late 20s or 30s or 40s, when they'd achieved something in the world and they felt still unsatisfied. And they were looking for someone to give them the kind of peace that was eluding them.
Now, you're talking about peace, but wasn't he also known for violence and violent sexual acts, and it wasn't all just meditation, was it?
Well, that's true, but I think that people, a lot of the use of violence, for instance, violence in the therapy groups in India, which was used for several years, was really a form of catharsis for people. It was a way to get out the anger, a way to get out the anxiety, a way to go through the fears that they had. The sex was somewhat different. That, again, was partly therapeutic. A lot of people, if you read the advice columns in the United States, have a lot of sexual problems, and not just here, but in India and Europe as well. And I think one of the things that happened is people went to Rajneesh with their sexual problems and with their sexual needs, and many of them actually became a good deal more healthy through going through these groups. Even, I spoke with many hundreds of people over the years, many of whom had gone through these violent groups and some of the sexual encounters, even some of them that were forced. And virtually everyone with whom I spoke, with a very few exceptions, said, even if I broke my arm, even if I felt coerced in a given situation, basically I felt it was good, which is quite striking and quite different from many of the other groups.
What, in your research, what if anything were you able to find out about the psyche of these gurus, religious cult leaders? Is there any thread, and if so, what is it, and what is their thinking process?
Well, I think that there are several things that they have in common. One of which is that for many of them there is a sense that when they were born that they were destined for some kind of greatness. It may be that an astrologer told the family, it may have been an expectation in the family for generations or for many years, or it may have just been somebody who recognized this child was special. So often these leaders were brought up to be special. They are, in many ways, at least by the time we get to know them as public figures and looking retrospectively at their backgrounds, they are very powerful people, very charismatic people, often very charming people. And I think that one of the crucial things about them is that they have the sense that they are going to make an important change in the world. Now, too often, we too easily dismiss them. We may say somebody like Rajneesh is simply after money, or he wants to have sex with his disciples. And I think that that's a very narrow point of view. These people, and I'm not saying that this makes them better or worse, but it does make them more significant. They believe very strongly, whether it's Rajneesh or the Reverend Moon, that they can make a difference in the course of the world.
Well, you know, you mentioned the Bhagwan and Reverend Moon, and of course you can look at Jim Jones, and that's the ultimate. It seems that these guys, isn't there a pattern that they will rise, they will become powerful, and then all of a sudden the whole thing crumbles? What causes that?
That's true. I think there's a moment of crisis in each of at least one moment of crisis in the lives of each of these leaders. With Rajneesh, there was a sense in the beginning that he was somebody who was going to be, at least as I was observing him, that he was going to be different from the other leaders because he was constantly preaching against religion, preaching against dogma, preaching against turning over your power to somebody else. Unfortunately, he seems to have fallen into the same trap, and that trap comes when people believe everything that their disciples tell them. So that you may have a sense that you're going to do something important, and then your disciples keep looking at you as if you're not only going to do something important, but as if you are the most important person ever.
They start believing their own PR.
That's exactly right, and that's very dangerous.
We've got some folks who would like to talk with you tonight. Our first caller's on the line. Calling from where? And your question tonight for our guest, please.
I'm calling from Los Angeles, California.
Okay.
Sir, my question is, one, because you are a psychiatrist, number one, and number two, you are addressing the subject of religion. And I quote here from a medical journal. This is called the Biology and Pathology of Interpersonal Relations, Volume 9, first published in 1946. and I quote Brock Chisholm, the reinterpretation and eventually ratification of right and wrong are the objectives of all psychotherapy.
Yeah. What can you paraphrase that?
Yes, psychiatry must now decide what is to be the immediate future of the human race. No one else can. Do you have a comment on that in your position as a psychiatrist, sir?
I think actually that's a bit absurd. I think that psychiatry is prone to its own grandiosity, and there's no reason to fall into that trap.
And our next caller is on the line. You're calling from where in your question for our guest, please?
Yes, please. Dr. Gordon.
Yes.
Joe from the Windy City here.
Go ahead. And you have a question?
Yes. Want to know what Dr. Gordon's exact view on God is.
He wasn't reading a statement.
Well, there's a Buddha, when people used to ask Buddha that question, he'd say, why worry about it? As far as I'm concerned, the point is to live here now and to live fully. And not to argue or worry about whether God exists or God doesn't.
And let's go to our next caller. You're on the line, and you're calling from where in your question? Maybe that's a message. Let's go to our next caller. You're calling from where in your question for our guest?
Hi, my name is John, and I'm calling from Santa Monica.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm wondering what the doctor thinks about the history and the validity of astrology and on how it affects various individuals who have been shown to have these various characteristics come true in their lives.
I often wonder about astrology. Sometimes I look at the descriptions of character and they really seem to make sense. Sometimes I look at astrological predictions about religious figures and they come true. But on the other hand, we also know that there are other times when predictions don't come true. So I'm not sure. There seems to be something to it. Exactly why, I don't understand.
And our next caller is on the line. Calling from where? The question tonight, please.
New York City.
All right.
It is so often that these people seem to do some breathing exercises that seem to give them this magnetic ability, and it seems to go all through history. They always seem to be vegetarians also. Could you comment on that?
I think the thing about vegetarians is not true at all. Jesus was not a vegetarian, for example. But breathing is a very powerful technique, and increasingly, it's not only religious people, but psychiatrists and psychologists and people who are interested in mental health have become interested in breathing practices. And right now, one of the fascinating things that's going on, one of the reasons I got interested in Rajneesh and wrote this book, is because of the convergence of psychology and mysticism. And the practices that we're using in mysticism, the practices that have been used in mysticism for thousands of years have begun to be adopted by people who are interested in mental health, because the effect is one of relaxation, one of increased awareness, one of a kind of increased calm, which is, as you say, magnetic. It's not only magnetic, it's pleasant, it's peaceful.
And our next caller is on the line. You're calling from where in your question, please?
Okay, I'm calling from Catasauqua, Pennsylvania.
Go ahead.
I'd like to ask Dr. Gordon what is his opinion on some of the positive positive thinking books like Dianetics.
You know, I tell you the truth, I have never been able to get through Dianetics. I've tried several times. I think that some of the techniques that are used, I've had some auditing, and some of the techniques that have been used in Scientology are very interesting. The problem that I've seen is the kind of aggressiveness and the kind of us and them aspect that comes when Scientology becomes an organized religion, or when Dianetics becomes Scientology and becomes an organized religion. I think that in my reading, and I'm certainly not an expert on Scientology, but I've seen that kind of us and them mentality, which characterized Rajneesh, which characterizes many religions, come to pass in Scientology. And at that point, however useful the techniques are, something else overshadows them and makes me uneasy.
All right, and another caller on the line. Go ahead, please. Calling from where? Your question tonight.
Hi, I'm calling from Knoxville, Tennessee.
All right.
And I was wondering what the doctor might have to say about the Penny Baker, Jim Baker, Reverend Paul, Wolf situation.
All right, the evangelicals.
Well, look, evangelicals are just like anybody else. That same trap of falling in love with one's power, falling in love with one's image, and there's is present there, clearly. And there's an insatiable kind of hunger that people have. I think one of the problems with religious leaders, and here's where my psychiatric mind comes in, is that you can't just be spiritual, you also have to work out the psychological side. And similarly, you can't just work with psychology, you also, if you're going to be fully human, have to develop the spiritual. I think that those people, if you'll forgive the kind of simplistic analysis, had a lot of unresolved problems. And they came out, and they're very clear in this ridiculous accumulation of material goods.
Now, could the same thing apply to the Rajneesh? He owned, what was it, close to 100 Rolls Royces.
Well, from the time he was a young man, he was somebody who was a bit compulsive about collecting things. He collected stones as a little boy. Later on, he collected pens, he collected watches, he collected cars. So part of the reason that he was so in love with this wealth has to do with his character. The other thing is you have to see him as a lower middle class or middle class boy growing up in a village in India who little by little moves into the center of life in India and finally onto, through the media, onto center stage in the world's media. Yeah. So this is an incredible sort of temptation to grandiosity, and I think he fell into it, at least for a while.
And let's take one more quick call. I think we have time, and a quick response, please. You're calling from where in your question?
Yes, I'm calling from Portland, Oregon, and I lived in an area here where we really saw the animosity that built up between Rajneesh and the local community. And my question is, isn't there a danger with utopianism in general, a kind of ideal vision for humanity that people are tempted to thrust onto other people? Isn't that always a danger in these groups?
Any time you try to thrust your vision on anyone else, there's a danger. But the vision still has something very beautiful about it.
It is a nice thought, isn't it?
I think that many of the things that they tried to do and many of the things that they accomplished were quite remarkable in terms of the ecology, in terms of the way people worked with each other, in terms of the spirit that at least for a while pervaded the ranch. And in many ways, it's very sad that it fell apart, because it was an end to dreams for lots of people there and for lots of people who were looking at them.
And we thank you for being our guest tonight, Dr. James Gordon, a cult researcher, author of The Golden Guru, The Strange Journey of the Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. Thank you, callers. We'll be right back.